One thing I noticed on this channel is how I never actually talked about music before. But in truth, I'm a huge music fan. So let's talk about my favorite albums from my favorite genre, which is punk rock. I know I don't really seem like much of a punk rocker, don't really have that mohawk hairstyle or the leather jackets or the ripped jeans. But I can change that later. What's important is I do listen to a lot of punk rock music. So let's talk about some of that. I'm gonna keep it short and let's talk about just 5 favorite punk rock albums. Number 5 is The Clash with Combat Rock. Combat Rock is a great album because it revolves around a concept. And it's like a concept album. I like those kind of stuff. And this is a punk rock concept album that revolves around the effects of war and a lot of things surrounding war or the limitations that are put on the people during that period. A lot of the songs here are great, especially there's the hits like Should I Stay or Should I Go, which is really a huge hit for The Clash. But my favorite songs here have to be the one that are more obscure and more tied to the album rather than to the radio airplay. And my favorite songs here are Inoculated City with a more minimalistic approach, similar to another song on another album by The Clash called Lost in a Supermarket. That song also had a very minimalistic approach and is similar to this song, and it fits in the context of this song. Another great song here is Know Your Rights, which harkens back to simpler days of punk rock, when it's more about the personality and the message, and it's less about the melody or rhythm. And Joe Strummer is just screaming at the top of his lungs here rather than singing the lyrics, and the guitars are just buzzing in the background. There's not much melody here, but that's why it's so special. It's just him screaming at the top of his lungs, delivering the message in a very strong and impactful way. The lyrics here are very ironic and satirical, but they get the message across very beautifully. My favorite song here has to be Straight to Hell, which is a very disturbing song when you actually look at the lyrics and what it's about. But more people should listen to it because it's an important song, as disturbing as it is. And the lyrics have to deal with immigrants, and it's from the perspective of somebody who dishes out that prejudice, which makes it a very disturbing listen but also a very unique perspective. My 4th favorite album is Avril Lavigne with The Best Damn Thing. Avril Lavigne has many great albums, but I'm gonna go with her fun one. She has deeper albums, more reflective albums, or albums that some people may consider to be her higher artistic achievements. Just gonna go with the fun one. This one is the most fun and punk rocky album. Is that even a word? This album has hits like Girlfriend, Keep Holding On, Hot. All those songs are really famous. Also When You're Gone, which I find to be incredibly misplaced in this album. When You're Gone just sticks out like a sore thumb. It should belong on one of her darker albums rather than this brighter, more pop album. Anyway, my favorite song here is Everything Back But You, which shows a very sassy personality from Avril. The song is about how her boyfriend cheated on another girl, and the whole song is just her yelling bad words at the girl, which it doesn't get any more punk than that. And there's a part in the song where she screams a lot of bad words about the girl, which is as juvenile as it is just fun to listen to. And it's like the old punk rock songs to me, how those singers are really angry and just scream out their dissatisfaction with the world or with a person or with a system. And that part of the song really reminds me of that, when she just screams out a whole string of bad words at a girl. That song also has this frenetic energy, and I think it's the most energetic song that Avril Lavigne has ever written. Another great song is the very anthemic Girlfriend, which has a very stomping beat in the background. It feels like you could really march to that beat. And also I like how, again, the personality of Avril Lavigne shines through in this song. And she has a very specific image. She has that skater punk girl image with dyed hair and eyeliner and all that stuff. She's really popular when I was a kid, and I could witness with my own eyes just how popular she was at her peak. She was everywhere. My cousin knew her, my father knew her, everybody knew her, my friends knew her, my sister knew her. She was really popular back then, but back then I still couldn't really appreciate what she was about. But now I could really appreciate her and her music and her ideology of daring to be different. My number 3 favorite punk album is The Jam, In the City. This album doesn't have that much public exposure as compared to some of the other albums that I mentioned earlier. It's definitely not as popular as the Pistols or the Clash or any bands like that. But The Jam is a band that if you actively search out for, like I did, it would totally be worth it, because I think their music is totally worth your curiosity and active research. The Jam has a very carefree and happy and joyous sound, which is a very stark contrast to a lot of the punk bands at that time who had a very nihilistic attitude. And their attitude was all about screw this world, screw Margaret Thatcher, screw the system, screw authority. And The Jam over here is just more of a joyous and happy, fun, carefree band. And I think they are the most carefree band to ever come out from the 70s. I just like their sound so much. Their best song, in my opinion, is Away From the Numbers, which is a song that perfectly encapsulates their personality. It's the most carefree punk rock song to come out from that era, and it's about just going away from the numbers, meaning the work or the school or stuff like that for a while, and just go out and have fun for a weekend. And it's a fantastic message. It's simple, but it works. A lot of their songs have this same personality, and I definitely recommend you to check out The Jam if you haven't. Something else about The Jam is that they have a really specific image, where they would wear tuxedos when they performed. They looked pretty well cut and pretty clean for a punk rock band, and they seem like the kind of punk rocker, the only kind of punk rocker that your father would allow to date your sister. This image is inspired by a lot of British invasion bands like the Kinks or the Beatles, and maybe that inspiration also extends itself into their music and their very carefree attitude. At number 2 is London Calling, again by The Clash, who I mentioned earlier, who did combat rock. With this album, they fused a lot of different genres together into punk rock to create a double album. Yes, a double album with 19 songs, all punk rock songs, but all sound different. Very impressive considering how a lot of punk rock songs from that era sound pretty similar. With London Calling, they fused elements of alternative rock, of reggae, or even pop rock, hard rock, soft rock. Everything is here and fused with a punk rock personality. My favorite songs here, and there's a lot, since a lot of them are so different, it's a little bit hard to pick out my favorites. But they're either Lost in a Supermarket, which I think sounds a lot like modern indie rock in a lot of aspects, and also Rudy Can't Feel, which is a more reggae type of song with a very reggae beat. A lot of punk musicians like to incorporate reggae in their music, and I think The Clash did it quite successfully with Rudy Can't Feel. And of course, A Brand New Cadillac, which I am pretty sure they sampled that opening guitar riff from Batman, the 1960s series. I'm not sure about this, but I think it sounds a lot like Batman, the 1960s series. But whatever it is, that guitar riff sounds really good with the whole song. My favorite album from punk rock is Nevermind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols by the Sex Pistols. This album is all about personality and attitude. I think the Sex Pistols isn't that much about technicality, isn't about how good they are technically when it comes to writing their music. It's more about the personality that they display when they are presenting their music or when they are performing live. And you see their personality shine through with everything that they do. Even the name of their band, Sex Pistols, it just screams personality. It's just such a band with so much character with everything that they do, and so much energy with all of their songs and their music. And Johnny Rotten has such a great voice in all of these songs. A very unique and playful British vocals. and also the guitar here really good too, a really buzzy and harsh guitar. It's a really nice album from top to finish, and everyone is going to have their different favorites when listening to this album, just because there are so many great hits here, especially Anarchy in the UK, which is a very famous punk rock song, and dare I say one of the most representative songs of the entire genre. But my favorites have to be Problems, which is a very cathartic song where Johnny Linden just screams problems, problems, problems again and again, the same word and again, but every time he screams it, it becomes just a little bit louder, and the more he repeats that same word, the more cathartic it is to listen to. Another great song is EMI. I have a few ideas as to what EMI stands for, but I can't really say for sure, but it doesn't matter because the song is great, and it also has the same cathartic feel that you get in Problems. But while I think that Problems is more about Johnny Rotten's vocals, I think EMI is more about the guitars from Steve Jones. His guitars are really at the forefront in this song. These are my 5 favorite punk rock albums, and I hope they introduce you to some great punk rock musicians.